Hi there, and welcome to the Third Impact Anime Podcast, where we talk about anime, video games, and conventions, with a healthy amount of existential dread mixed in. You can find out more about our podcast by following us on Twitter at TI_anime. Thanks again for stopping by, and enjoy the show!
Hey everyone, before we begin this episode of Third Impact Anime, a bit of a heads up. While recording this episode, we had a bit of technical issues during the recording, so you may hear some voices drop out or some less quality audio that you would expect, but it shouldn't hamper the enjoyment of the episode. Enjoy!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast. I'm Austin here with a great crew of people. As always, I've got Tobias with me.
Yo, Tobias.
Oh, I'm completely sorry, guys.
Sully with me.
I promise I won't yell as much this time.
Okay, we'll see if that actually happens. We got Bill.
Hello.
Nice. All right, so today we have a topic that's very near and dear to Sully's heart, and it's called Excel Saga. It's a series that came out in the very, very, very late 90s, October of 1999 to be specific, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. But how are you guys doing? What's up, everybody? How's everybody's stuff going? I guess we'll start with Bill. How's your stuff?
There's a lot of stuff going on. Is I found this wonderful program that I think our wonderful Facebook group should totally check out. It's called Anime Music Quiz.
Oh.
And my friend Michael found it, and it's a really fun time where basically you can get into a small group or a large group of people where you are given a set of openings, inserts, or closings from different anime, and it could be from any time period. And basically, you are trying to guess where the show, what show is that? And it's very customizable, where if you just wanted to do anime from the 1990s, you could do that. If you just wanted to do the openings, you can do that. You can also link your MAL account. So if you have a My Anime List account and you list the shows you've watched, it'll just pull that completed list and just do shows that you've watched. I find it really fun, and I think the Facebook group and us among the podcast crew should definitely play it. I had a blast, and as someone who loves a good quiz, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And for the people listening at home, what is it called once again?
It's called Anime Music Quiz. It's free. It's all one word. And all you need to do is just set up an account.
Sweet.
Which is just your email and like a username. And there you go.
We should definitely play that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah. So what have you been up to, Tobias?
Well, I've kind of changed gears myself. Finally kind of out of convention hell, wrapping up my, fourth or fifth convention with Triad. And I've got about a 2-month break before Animazement. So I'm taking that time to submit a whole bunch of new panels to Animazement. So yeah, I actually sat down today and submitted a whole bunch of the stuff that I want to run that I've already got, and we kind of brainstormed some new ideas. I'm really excited about spending my free time working, as you do.
Mm-hmm.
I've been kind of catching up on podcasts. I've kind of got back into this mood where I remember that podcasts exist. So I've actually been really enjoying catching up on doing some A&M, AWO, and one you just introduced me to called Anime is Lit.
Yes.
That seemed really interesting, but like after listening to the Drunk Ava episode and the narration episode today, like I'm really, really in love with the way they're able to discuss this stuff. It's a really educational and informative view on like how we view these series. And I mean, at this point, you guys know that I'm really into the technical aspects and the more, the whole filmography aspects and that kind of thing of the actual animation process. But I really also really enjoy like the more literary aspects of anime and storytelling anyway. So to have these people that are much smarter than me talk about this stuff in an intelligent manner has been really refreshing and a new take on this hobby.
There's so many different ways to approach big quotes, anime criticism, whatever it is that means, and that could be like a very technical thing, like animation based, or like individual based and just like visual style and stuff like that. But these are also stories as well, so it's good to hear it from like all those perspectives, and that's kind of the direction that they tend to lean towards. So it's really fun and refreshing. Like I like listening to those folks.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, after watching the Nintendo Direct from a week ago, and kind of being really excited for, of course, Smash Brothers and a few other games that are coming out, ended up picking Splatoon 2 up, kind of sitting on that for a little bit, but just barely played a little bit of that single player mode so far. Kind of really excited to jump back in and enjoy being a Squid Kid again.
Mm-hmm.
Mario Tennis hype.
Yeah. You can be Chain
play
Chomp.
as a chain chomp.
Yeah.
Wow.
I often wonder, like, you can also play as like a blooper in one of the Mario Party games. I'm like, who is standing for the blooper or the chain chomp? Like, where are the Twitter fans who are just like pouring in Nintendo, being like, where are these characters? Why are they not playable? Who's doing that?
I mean, I'm still waiting for the open world like Waluigi game.
Yes.
Waluigi Odyssey.
Yeah, I would play that so much.
What are you up to, Sully?
So my plan last week was, since it was spring break, I was going to go home and sort of use it as a way to de-stress and just sort of like get away from, papers and research and stuff like that. And I spent a week in a drafty farmhouse in rural North Carolina with no hot water and the internet going in and out. So my plan to relax and catch up on anime and read some manga that has been sitting on my shelf and not being read failed. And then when I came back, I had all of those papers and researches and all that just staring me back in the face. So I've had to like hit the ground running, and I am very exhausted.
Let this be a lesson for summer break and fall break and all that whatnot, that whenever you're at UNCG, don't forget to download your episodes of anime and put them on your iPod Classic and then go home and watch them.
Which is how I watched Excel Saga the first time around, so it's all kind of coming full circle.
Excellent.
But right now, I'm trying to space out the stuff I have to do as part of class and research with stuff that's fun. So like I'm listening to a lot of podcasts again, which I hadn't been doing. Last time I had like a podcast marathon was over the summer. I used to take walks around the neighborhood near my old apartment and just like listen to podcasts for like an hour or two during my walk. And now I'm like at the gym, like at 6 a.m, listening to like anime nostalgia or listening to an audiobook. Or right now the podcast I'm really into that I've kind of like caught up with is Mike Nelson from Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater, of course, and the head writer from Riff Tracks. They started reading Ready Player One and doing a sort of snarky pseudo book club where they read it. And I am a very ardent supporter of literature. I don't believe any book should be burned until I read this book. And now I think this is the one piece of literature we can all agree needs to be completely and totally wiped from the human record.
So
because there's not a book in it. It's literally a Wikipedia. Like he went to every Wikipedia article for every piece of media created within the years 1975 and 1999. It took every trivia section from them, strung them in order, and then put like a very flimsy amount of a plot in between those trivia sections, and
So
called it a book.
So it's a Family Guy episode.
Ooh.
I would not even give it even that much credence.
So, Sully, you're saying that the entire body of work of Ayn Rand can stay, but Ready Player One needs to
I
be
had
burned?
to read Anthem, and I had a counselor who told me to read The Fountainhead. And I would say
man.
even Ayn Rand, as cold and heartless and horrible as I think she is, has at least some sort of sociological, anthropological, or critical reason to stay within the literary canon. I could not find a single one of those that could apply to anything Ernest Cline has ever written.
Man. That is a red hot take.
Oh, I'm on fire now. Oh, that's amazing.
And now let me talk about Excel Saga, which I will defend.
Tobias, do you want to introduce the series, and then we'll let Sully go ham?
Yes. So, Excel Saga. Where do I begin with Excel Saga?
Space, the final frontier.
Yeah.
I mean, you
These
could
are the
either really
voyages
begin
of
with the-
Starship Across.
You could begin either with like the manga or the anime because they are very different.
Yeah, so just kind of give me the basic like Wikipedia version here. Excel Saga was originally a manga that started being serialized in 1995 in Young King Hours, which is a monthly magazine, I believe. It started back from 95 and continued to run. I think they were releasing the last couple of issues of the Tangoban in 2011. Just kind of skimming over this article here. So it ran a lot longer, the manga series did, than I thought. I was buying a couple of these issues back when I first saw this in like 2006 or 7. And yeah, I thought it was done at that point, but it was still going on much after I had forgotten about the series. The anime started airing in late 1999, so the last possible moment of that decade. This was created by JC Staff, which has worked on a whole bunch of stuff. You guys want to talk about JC Staff here for a second?
I do.
Sure, yeah.
I've watched a lot of JC Staff shows, and most of their oeuvre that I have seen have a tinge of romance, and they're very tied into romantic plots. So to find out again that this was made by JC Staff kind of blew my mind. I know JC Staff is a big studio, but I don't picture this as part of their canon.
Just kind of skimming over their stuff there. There's a whole bunch of work under their belt, and I mean, myself, I can't really see them having a particular style in the same way that like Gainax would, for instance. Because I've got some of the early stuff is Slayers, for instance. Maze, wow, I haven't heard of Maze in a long time. Utena. Yeah, Utena. Here we have this here. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. Azumanga, right after Excel Saga, for instance.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it seems like there seems to be kind of I would probably from around that time period, Azumanga probably be the most appropriate peer to Excel Saga from that studio. Though a lot of these series that I'm reading right here, I've never even heard of, to my discredit, I guess.
They've actually done 2 of my very early Weeaboo Day favorites. Descendants of Darkness, which is sort of a terrible, it's been described as a gateway drug to Shonen Ai, and then Doki Doki School Hours, which is that series that everyone makes fun of because it's on my bookshelf and I have no reason for it to be there. And I'm like, it was cute when I was in high school. So I never really realized until I looked on this list for this episode how I've kind of floated in and out of their oeuvre, as Bill put it.
Yeah.
So I've watched that Darkness. It was on Netflix for like a million years. And
I watched it when it was on Chiller, when they had their Anime Monday that they took from Sci-Fi, and that was one of the few avenues I had to watch anime at that point in my life. So, and I didn't really know what yaoi was or what like boys love was, and I was like still like kind of awkward and closeted. So watching, I was like, they seem like really good friends, and yeah,
very close cousins, right?
Right, yeah, just like that.
And to give it a little bit more grounding in the modern day, JC Staff has worked on stuff like Shimonetta, Prison School, Flying Witch. Food Wars, and most recently, Children of the Whales, which just launched on Netflix like yesterday.
They've also done One Punch Man.
They're gonna do season 2, which I'm a little bit scared about because Madhouse just like they really knocked it out of the park with season 1, and I don't know how JC Staff's gonna handle it.
If Nabashin shows up in One Punch Man.
Oh my gosh! Please.
Yeah, he's the only person that can beat Saitama, of course.
Maybe it's just my friend has been showing me the wrong shows then when it comes to the JC Staff's oeuvre.
I mean, so definitely what you said is a part of it, that's for sure.
But anyway, back to Excel Saga.
Yeah. So going back into that that's the studio. We go back to the original work. The mangaka for this is, very infamously Rikuto Koshi, which if you've watched at least the first 30 seconds of Excel Saga, you've already heard this name at least once.
He is a major character in many regards.
He's his own, like the manga creator himself appears in the anime as a parodical version of himself. And looking at his work, I mean, that's primarily what he's known for. I would say other than that, he has illustrated a work called Pandora and the Crimson Shell, Ghost Turn, which I don't think really took off, but it's one of those things I at least recall hearing about.
I got an anime a few years ago.
Yeah, I did get an anime version here. Original idea by Masamune Shiro, which is really interesting, but I haven't really caught up with that myself, so can't really speak to the quality of that. But back to the anime itself, that was Shinichi Watanabe, not to be confused with Shinichiro Watanabe, of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo and a bunch of other shows. And again, the director of the anime himself appears in the work, just like Koshi does, which is another sort of big aspect of the show itself.
Dressed as an afro-clad Lupin III.
Yes.
He dresses like that in real life, and that's the funny part.
As you do.
Yeah, if you go to his
Wikipedia, he does it so that he can stand out and get attention. I'm like, well, I mean, mission accomplished.
If you go to his Wikipedia page, it's that outfit. That's his profile picture of him with the red.
I never got to meet him or speak to him, but he did go to animes. But I saw him, and I was that was like a cryptid sighting for anime is real. I had them watch the first 3 episodes of the series because I knew that having them cram all of Excel Saga in a few weeks, they would hate me.
Yeah, I don't
But
think
Tiffany Grant plays a character later, and
I'm just kind of skimming. I don't recognize any of these other names right off the bat. In English, Excel is played by and Larissa Walcott. We have Plaza Jason Douglas, played by Monica Rial. And Minchi by Hilary Haag.
Mm-hmm.
Not really sure how to pronounce that last name. Japanese Minchi's played by Satomi Korogi, who doesn't. Well, we got. Oh God, yeah. There's a lot of work here. She was Chi in Chi Sweet Home, appropriately enough. We've got Frosh and Fairy Tale. One episode of Nichijou, interestingly enough. She played Togepi, Pichu, and Pokemon. She is Poco in episode 7, the first part. I'll have to rewatch that, knowing that's Minchi. And she also was Choo Choo in Utena. So she has a diverse animal cast under her belt. And that's pretty much from there. And I think that's pretty much all to talk about the statistics for this show.
Cool.
I think we're kind of beating around the bush to explain the plot.
Yeah. Is there?
I mean, the manga, the plot is a little more straightforward, but in the anime, it's taken even more off the rails than in the original work.
Just like pornography, you don't watch Excel Saga for the plot.
You really don't. Excel Saga is essentially about Excel, whose last name is also Excel, and how she works for the ideological organization of Across, which consists of her boss, Il Palazzo, and one other person who gets introduced in the second episode, Hyatt, and how they're going to attempt to take over the city of F in F Prefecture because it'd be much easier to take over one city than take over the entire world. They're going to do it in increments.
I mean, that's only reasonable.
It's only reasonable. I mean, it makes sense. That's how you have that's setting reasonable goals for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire series, both the manga and the anime, is a sort of parody of life in 90s Japan after the economic bubble pops. But more so in the manga. It's more of a commentary and a satire in the manga. In the anime, it's more making fun of genres. Each episode is we have Rikuto saying, I give the permission to turn Excel Saga into XYZ genre of an anime. So the second episode is space, and then there's a B-movie military film, and then I think my favorite episode is the one either where they do the dating simulator or when they do like bootleg anime cell distributors in America who all speak very stereotypically and very bizarre.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good one.
Go ahead, Tobias.
Oh, well, I'm going to go to the next area where you're going to branch off of.
Yeah, a little bit. Mine was more of a broader question, but you can go ahead and jump on. I'll ask it in a minute.
Okay. So, Sully, give us a little background about yourself in Excel Saga. Like, when did you discover this series?
Oh God, it had to be at least around like 2010 because I was still in high school when I watched it. This was, as we alluded to before, my method of watching anime at this point in my life was my background was very conservative. What we watched and played and stuff that was very heavily monitored, and so anime was kind of like the weird like Hot Topic kids watching. So I was kind of like not allowed to watch it in the open, so I would download episodes illegally. Don't do what I do, kids. And put them on my little first generation iPod that my grandmother got me like for my like 15th, 16th birthday. And I would go home because at my mom's house, my parents are divorced, we did not have high-speed internet. We had dial-up until I had graduated from high school in 2011. We still had dial-up. So I could not watch anything with dial-ups. I would download them at my dad's side of the family, who did have high speed, but they monitor what I watched constantly. So I could not watch something there. So I would download, put it on the iPod, go home, and after school I would have like 3 episodes of 3 different series, and I just watch them and kind of continue from there. And Excel Saga was one of them, and I think I heard of it just because it got mentioned in a few internet jokes on some message board that I had been like browsing at the time, and the colors and the humor kind of intrigued me, so I think that's where I kind of got into it. And because I wasn't keeping up with seasons at that point. I didn't even know the concept of anime seasons. So I just watched whatever I kind of stumbled upon.
Right.
What about yourself, Tobias?
So back in the day, I discovered that there was a thing called anime conventions, that where you could go to these places where you could talk about, these like Japanese cartoons with like-minded individuals. So like I just got out of high school, like just like 2-3 months in college, and I decided to go to Anime Week at Atlanta. First, like adult trip, trip outside of going with your parents to vacation or whatever. So do all this planning, go to AWA, like I get there, and like at the time I had like a really crappy car, so I ended up taking the bus anyway. And we get there, I got a hotel that's like a mile away from the convention center. I end up walking to the convention center because Uber wasn't a thing back then, and I was already like grouped by the first taxi we took getting there. So ended up walking to the hotel, led to the convention center. So I show up, and at that point, like it's September, but it's not quite, it's not quite autumn yet. Don't have that nice breezy autumn. So it's pretty hot, pretty humid. This is Georgia after all. The Showbiz Convention Center. I'm like already kind of exhausted from the walk. Really gross and sweaty. So we get there, we get our badge. I'm already really like flustered because you're really excited for this kind of stuff. And
Were you flying solo?
I was with a buddy of mine from high school. We haven't really kept in touch at all, but we just kind of decided to go do it together. So it was me and one other guy. Like we just got our badge. Like we had that pack full of the schedule and everything. We're really excited. And so we sit down in like the main hall while we're waiting for the opening ceremonies. And they're playing this pre-roll of this like random anime. And it's the date sim episode of Excel Saga. And I will never forget that because of that moment. This is like the first anime I watched, first convention I ever went to. And like I'm kind of trying to pay attention to the schedule, try to like get everything organized. But like I'm also trying to watch this really goofy date sim like parody deal. And I don't know, something about that moment just kind of struck me so much that I immediately went to Dito's room and I bought the box set, which I probably shouldn't have done because it was like $150, which back in 2004 wasn't really to sneeze at for a college kid. Still isn't anything to sneeze at. But yeah, that was one of my first major purchases at an anime convention. And it stuck with me for a while afterward. Like shortly thereafter, I discovered, broader internet humor and kind of grew out of it eventually. But that initial shock of Excel Saga, I think will always kind of stick with me to some degree. But I really like that itself. It was a really great parody. And I feel like that's one of the strengths of Excel Saga. We could go into more to it in a little bit, but like it's very good at parody and parodying the genres that it does. Bill, have you seen it?
Yeah, I think that was my experience with Excel Saga is very similar to yours, Tobias. I discovered it at my first anime convention, which was Animazement, I think in probably 2008 or 2007.
Okay.
I going to Animazement for the first time, I was really overwhelmed because I didn't really know that much, and there's all this stuff going on, like the cosplayers and the different booths and all this filming. So the first thing I did when I got in there was go to a screener room, and they were playing Excel Saga, and I think they were playing the second episode, which is the space sci-fi parody episode. And the thing that got me attached to the series and is just one, the absurdity of it. It's very much kind of in that British style of humor. We're just gonna do quick cutaways and just keep moving on, and it doesn't really need to make sense. And also as you said before, the parody humor was really funny. Like the opening scroll of the parody of the Star Wars opening. Where I was like, I get that reference, and I started laughing just nonstop. And it's one of the few anime comedies that I can say that I really enjoy, and that's rare at this point in my fandom, where I could probably count a number of anime comedies that I like on my hand.
Hmm.
Uh, but just kind of watching it, just I forgot how manic and how fast it seems that each episode seems to go. A good comparison would be it's kind of like when you're a kid and it's Halloween and you eat all the candy, where you just have
Yeah.
you just have a sugar rush, and that's kind of what Excel Saga to me is in a nutshell. Is it's a sugar rush of you're just going so fast, and that's kind of Excel the character. Also, just with how fast she's talking and what she's trying to do.
Exactly. How about yourself, Austin? Have you actually watched this?
So the first time I watched it, and I have not seen the entire series, just very little of it. The first time I watched it was when Sully did a presentation on it, maybe probably about like 2 years ago at a Japanese club in college. And he showed. You showed the first
I
episode,
showed
right? Did
the
you?
first episode, and I showed the dating sim episode because that one just makes me laugh so hard. But I kind of forgot that if you don't see the 2 episodes in between it, you get a little lost. So I had to like pause and explain it. And I showed it on Hulu, so it had ads in between, which I think people needed because they needed that breather.
Oh man, when commercial breaks come in handy. Yeah, that was the first time I saw it, and watching it for the first time back then, I thought like some of my initial reactions were, I think I saw this way too late because by that point, like my tolerance for like early 2000s digipaint looking shows was just like, I don't like looking at this, so it
Yeah.
was not a
Yeah.
very visually pleasant experience, I guess. And we watched the English dub, and that really just sort of grated on my ears. And most of the time, like 9 out of 10 times, I will probably watch it, and I will probably like it. But this time, it didn't really do anything for me. But going back just a couple days ago and rewatching the first episode for the first time, which I surprisingly remembered a lot of because I kind of had subconsciously forgotten a lot of it. Watching it again in the Japanese version, I enjoyed it a lot more because like Excel still kind of gets on my nerves because she's so manic and whatnot, but I appreciate it a lot more. So I guess this episode will kind of be you guys sort of trying to convince me that I should watch the rest of it if you're up to the challenge.
I'm up to it. I'm almost like adamant that this is a modicum of respect.
I get that, and
Yeah.
I was thinking of like whenever I'm watching it, I was thinking of it in the mindset of us now living in this sort of pop team epic like anime culture right now, and how a show like this is probably ripe for a comeback in the climate right now, because it and Pop Team Epic they're very very different, but I their spirit. And I think people that are younger and are just like now getting into anime comedies with like Pop Team and stuff like that, maybe if they go back and check out Excel Saga, there might be something there for them.
Well, I mean, Excel Saga already did get a sequel, Fairies.
I thought it was called Puni Puni
Yeah,
Poremi.
we'll talk about Pretty Please Women a little bit, which is something that the Tatami Galaxy does as well to great effect. In its whole, in the whole way that it tries to tell its story. But when we look into like what they do here and just have the voice actors just do whatever, like that's pretty much what they do in Good Good Fairies. Just have this like get the voice actresses really intoxicated and have them just kind of narrate their own little shtick with it, and it really works. Good Good Fairies is one of those things that certainly won't be everyone's cup of tea, just like Pop Team Epic, but it's got a very similar weird humor vibe to it.
It's kind of funny also that you mentioned the English dub because the actress for Excel lost her voice doing it.
I mean, I don't blame her.
And
surprised.
if I had to introduce someone to the series, I would say watch the sub. because it does go so fast, and you would think listening to it in English you would be able to pick it up more naturally, but because it does go so fast, you really just can't let it process. And like if you read the subtitles, you're kind of taking it in a lot easier. But and I just put in the DVD and had it on. I had the English version, so I didn't have to read subtitles because I was just not half paying attention to it. And I think the sub is much better. Even the performances in the dub are really superb. I think Montreal is one of my favorite voice albums, and I love her version of Hyatt because there's almost a sort of smarmy to it that's very, very deep in her performance that she kind of knows that she's better than everyone around her.
Cadence that Westerners don't seem to have, of that kind of that rapid talk or that kind of very in your face sort of acting that doesn't seem kind of hammy. But for some reason, Japanese actors seem to be able to pull it off.
The Japanese actors being able to comprehend the material a little bit more, because a lot of Japanese humor is like wordplay based and like cultural reference based and stuff like that. They're able to work with that more because they are, native Japanese.
Reading the manga is, I think the manga has a more streamlined sort of trend story compared to the anime, where Nagashima pretty much said, "This is my train, and we're taking it wherever I feel like taking it." But because there are so many cultural and even political references, I have the manga right here, and I looked at there's like 2 pages of footnotes between the footnotes and the manga in order to appreciate it, and you get better with it, more familiar you become with what he's talking about in Japan. But if you're not very up on like Japanese politics or history or cultural norms of that time period, it's very hard to get into.
Fair. I don't know if any of you guys have watched it. Probably Tobias is the most likely to have seen it. But have you guys seen Magical Shopping Arcade?
I've
Nope.
seen like the first episode.
Okay, well, judging by how Excel Saga is, after having watched Magical Shopping Arcade probably about a year ago, you would probably like it a lot. It's a little bit more streamlined. Like there's more stronger like narrative threads in it and character threads. About like 2004, so not
Pop Team Epic, that's just one series where I get when people like it, but it's just not my brand of humor, and it's so weird. I like Cell Saga so much because normally a series I would what about it. I think a lot of it's nostalgia. You have a lot of options with anime, a few titles at a time, and try to just jump into them blindly. So I think part of it is just something I kind of into by actors. I think because it's so colorful and has real sort of point to it, that there's something almost nihilistic about it that I enjoy.
Anything, I'd be like, gosh, I know that reference. Wow. Now it's sort of like, oh, there's a reference. Oh, one's coming out.
Oh god. Time to drink.
Kind of balance that the anime has between genres. Like every episode is, we are going to take the plot of it and retell it through this genre that we pick, whether it be science, soap opera, have you. Like, because he's a huge fan of that, and like in the final episode, like and costumes. So thinking about like, so I think when we talk about the humor, we have to talk about like when we particularly watch it, how much of it is random to us because we are not in that culture and didn't grow up with that context, and how much of it might make a little more sense to a Japanese audience. Because I think the humor of Excel Saga, the manga, which is present in the anime, is more of a cultural, political sort of satire, talking about like, especially with the 3 roommates who live next to Excel and Haya, Watanabe, Iwata, and the guy who looks like
Sumiyoshi.
yeah, who looks so much like a guy I knew back when I was watching this. It's not even funny, and like has that same sort of attitude. It's very weird, but they're sort of these representative figures of, the Ronin roaming, shiftless Japanese youth of the late 90s, where, the bubble is popped and they're kind of in this hopeless situation. And then they themselves, later in the series, where Austin didn't watch, but maybe Bill and you, Tobias, kind of got to, they become this Super Sentai parody, which was sort of the spark for Excel Saga, because he wrote a doujinshi that was basically these characters, or at least a rough draft of them doing the same thing. This idea of the bored civil servant being more than, what they really are in their everyday life.
Whenever they first showed up, my first thought was like, oh, it's nice to see the cast of Otaku no Video decided to show up.
Yeah.
But then it seems like, at least by your definition, it's more like the cast of Welcome to the NHK shows up, and then they become Samurai Flamenco.
I mean, that's probably a more apt description of it, honestly.
I want to watch that show.
Which one?
Just that, like...
Oh.
Well, I mean, if you keep watching Excel Saga, that basically is the show at one point.
That is true, yeah.
Well, just replace the cast from NHK becomes Samurai Flamenco with just the cast of NHK becomes horrible and depraved, and that's just NHK.
But when you read the manga, you get more of a sense of this sort of listlessness and this sort of anger, because Rikuto is a very interesting person. He was a doujinshi artist, and if the first volume of the manga is anything to go by, he writes like the introduction to the original volume, and it's half of him, like him as himself speaking, and half of him saying that he's a furry artist who's like trying to pressure his other half of himself to draw furry art. It's very he's a very odd sort of like, he kind of has his finger in the weird, creepy otaku world, and then half of it in the more the political, satirist, more suitable for public life face. He's a very interesting person from the tiny bits of information you can kind of glean from him from either his work or the internet.
Actually, Sully, funny fact. Okay. First, I think it's either him or the director of the Excel Saga, where this is at a convention, and the voice actress for Azusa from Idolmaster was there, and she is very pretty. And it's a video of her doing a Q&A, and it's, I think, the manga artist of the Excel Saga going like, "Oh, please let me kiss you."
That's disturbing, and I am very uncomfortable. I've always had like a weird discomfort towards Rikuto, though, because even though I do enjoy Excel Saga, he can tell that he has some proclivities, because there are some moments where it gets kind of sexual and sort of weird.
Yeah, but just kind of that dark otaku. I thought I would, based on what I saw, I can't find that video anymore, but that's kind of a dark otaku moment.
But kind of like going back to like some of the other aspects of humor as we enjoyed it as Westerners, we talk about how the humor in some way hasn't really aged well in some regard. But I think it's important to look at the time itself. So when I first watched this back in 2004, like I was still really enjoying like really awful webcomics. That was the height of Mega Tokyo and 8-Bit Theater, that kind of awful humor that we were digging up online. And it's really kind of struck a chord. This was LOL so random XD before that really became a meme in and of itself. And compared to more modern stuff, like Nichijou or Pop Team Epic, these shows, these comedy that operates on a whole different level, like Galaxy Brain levels of comedy. It's something we don't really get much anymore. And I think it hasn't really aged well to some degree, but it is important to look back at that. Again, this came out in 1999, brought over here in 2001. Like that in itself was, a meme over here in the Western fandom for some time.
I would say like the comedy and the absurdness of it, that really depends on you. I think the barrier to entry is going to be the art style. It's in the anime. Like, who's the leader of Across?
Il Palazzo.
Oh, thank you. El Palazzo.
At least we think. Until the end of the series.
Like, basically, if I were to describe him, is he's personality-wise, he's Gendo from Evangelion, and he's a Rob Liefeld drawing. with his big shoulders and his big hair, and like I don't think I ever saw his feet. He's a Rob Liefeld drawing, and
The big shoulders is like this bizarre, like elaborate, like epaulette thing that he wears, and there's an episode where he's in like just without the cape, and he's actually quite normal looking, and I do not understand the purpose or the function of the huge shoulder pads.
Whenever I first saw him, it didn't occur to me until just now, but he reminded me of like a hair metal version of Ovan from .gu. I don't know if you guys played that game or not, but he looks basically the same.
And I think they even reference that at some point. Like, I think it's the Days of episode where he starts to try to learn to play guitar, but he's bad at it.
Yeah.
And he was doing like a visual K band, and they just like, yeah, he could totally fit in a visual K band for sure.
Yeah, in the first episode, you see him like fiddling around with the guitar, and it's just like he's got like a book open that says like "Guitar for Idiots" or something similar to that.
Much of the show, we have little cuts to Ilpalot. So what he does to spend time while Excel and Hyde are running missions, it's usually stupid hobbies. There's one episode where he spends the entire episode making a chain of dominoes. And they get ruined at the very end, and he just like has like a meltdown because that's what he spent the entire time, like the entire 24 minutes doing is just dominoes. And it's kind of a joke that he is this huge ideological leader who has literally nothing to do with himself.
And I don't think really cares about the mission that his group is trying to accomplish.
Well, in the manga, he's from another planet, but in the anime, he's second to that man, who is this mysterious force that is sort of compelling the narrative that when Nabashin sort of takes over the main A plot of the story, and Excel and Hyatt become kind of secondary characters despite getting most of the screen time. It's a very weird way it's done. I know that when I showed the first two, or not the first two, the two episodes in Anime Club or Japanese Club at school, a frequent joke afterwards became the character of Pedro's sexy wife, who is named Pedro's sexy wife. That's her official title. And I'm here to finally drop I've been sitting on this for a while, drop the spoiler that the Great Will of the Macrocosm and Pedro's sexy wife are one and the same in the anime.
Whoa.
Oh.
So you've just had your world rocked, Austin.
Man, well, you know what? That makes episode 2 like a little bit less jarring, because I thought, I hate that Pedro like accidentally cheated on his wife with the universe, but I mean, glad to hear he wasn't as unfaithful as I expected.
It's all about perspective. It's all about how you interact with the text.
So I think this gives, a lot more weight to the phrase "my wife is my universe."
I mean, quite literally. And I think going back to like the idea of humor, I think one of the reasons that this series appeals to me personally is when I watch Pop Team Epic. One, I'm an old person, so like the beef or chicken joke just flies over my head, and I just don't find it funny, not even like in a like Beckett sort of way. And I find this sort of like postmodern nihilistic self-loathing meme humor that's kind of come out in like the last 3 or 4 years is just very unpleasant and miserable. And as much as I hated the LOL so random humor when I was growing up, as a teenager, I kind of miss it because it's like it was so hopeful. We were cheerful, towards the idea of oblivion, as opposed to now where just a random string of words and non sequiturs is somehow funny in a cosmic way.
I think a lot of that too is like, you'll probably mention this too, Tobias, that Pop Team Epic makes a lot of referential humor that is not the typical fare, and it's like referencing some really, really obscure like Japanese live action fandoms and stuff like that just cannot possibly be funny to us unless it's explained. And the old idiom of like, if you have to explain the joke, it's not as funny, but that's sometimes true. So
I mean, I think Excel Saga does that. It's just that because it's now a decade further and we have a different experience and otaku culture now, we get more of that humor. Because when I watched this, I had only barely seen Galaxy Express 39, I kind of would understood the Matsumoto reference in episode 3, but it was more of a visual, like, that's really jarring that their faces are so different, and this the visual style is very different. It's really weird that when they hit the Poochus, they get this very serious face with the thick eyebrows. LOL, so random. But there's like a whole bunch of references and a lot more smarter, or I should say, more smart humor, like present than just that in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's kind of the same way with what Pop Team Epic's doing, is that we just haven't got to that point as a culture where we understand, what the whole beef or chicken thing is, or, all those references they throw at you. I mean, sure, they're a lot funnier when you get them, but there still is a weirdness to it. And I feel like Excel Saga and Pop Team Epic do embody that together. And you talk about like nihilism, and sure, Pop Team Epic is a lot like that style of humor, that quote unquote shit posting style of humor is definitely more nihilistic. Like we had that in Excel Saga too. Like you mentioned that their economic state is very depressed. We have the 3 Ronin and how they talk about how depressing their situation is with I think the straight man is Watanabe, correct, of the group.
Yes.
And the other 2 just always show up and try to steal his food, and they don't really understand how serious their situation is. We have Excel in the first episode going to kill this guy, or she just breaks in and is going to cut this guy down. We have the 2 aspects of her conscious, the good Excel and the bad Excel, show up to convince her to do this or not, and she just ends up I think the good Excel arrests the bad Excel, or
yes,
I love
it. As a little visual guy.
The good Excel murders the bad Excel.
Yeah,
and then gets arrested
by the police Excel. So there's a lot of that. It's a different setup, but it still has very similar. I guess I don't know if nihilism is quite the right word, or more of a negative outlook on life in a lot of ways as well. It just does it in a very different setup.
And just to add some context, is I just decided after the show being out for a month or so to look up the beef or chicken joke and have it explained to me. Apparently, asking beef or chicken is similar to saying, "Are you a man or a mouse?" in Japanese. So essentially, the airplane stewardess is inadvertently calling out Popko's toughness, and now that joke is humorous to me, and I can go, "Oh, aha." Funny.
Well, see, it's funny. That's not even the end of it. So that was, we all understood the joke was, do you want a beef, as in do you want to fight, or are you a chicken? But that's not even that. Apparently it's a commercial. There's some commercials where they do something very similar to a specific type of meal. I don't know if it's a microwave meal or something. I have to look it up. But it is a whole different other level that we're reading it incorrectly. That's not having that same context. In I want to say episode 5 or 6, there's a weird Steamboat Willie joke from the manga that doesn't actually make a visual appearance in the anime, that requires 2 or 3 different understandings of how Disney is portrayed in Japan. It's really super complicated, and you're right. You kind of have to have that background, or it just seems like it's just LOL so random in some ways.
And I think, again, that goes back to, how do we, as Western viewers, interpret or recontextualize Japanese humor? Because when I don't want to focus so much on Pop Teen Epic and an Excel Saga podcast, but when I hear the beef or chicken joke, it reminds me so much of, those Tumblr posts, the conversation or the chat posts where it's someone says something, and someone's like, "Oh, thank you, I owe you my life." That exaggerated, a simple everyday question becomes a very dire, melodramatic, or non sequitur thing, and that humor just really annoys me for some reason. I see it as so very common and so easy to replicate, and I guess that's what turned me off to it. This is kind of internet humor where we're just going to take everything to the nth degree because everything is pointless and nihilistic, and I'm not really here for that.
I don't think Puppy Mimics really does that. It's more of the style of the weird, just the weirdness. If you look at all the different SpongeBob memes that come out every single week, I think now it's the one with Patrick with the weird W eyes or whatever. It's more toward that, where it's just, let's just do something really out there and visually striking. You have the whole Hellshake Yano thing, the bit there, and that's awesome on its own level. But it's just you sit there for 5 minutes, they're wondering, what the fuck did I just watch? Did they really just do a flip note animation about this dude named Hellshake Yano, and it works. If you're into that, but it's very out there.
And like I was saying, that's the idea of recontextualization. Like the people who didn't understand the joke, like how, but they still find it funny. Like where do they derive humor from? And going back with Excel Saga, like me and you, Tobias, I guess we watched it in a similar time period, like, and enjoyed it. So what does it mean for us to get humor out of this if it wasn't made for our consumption? Are we reducing it? Are we recontextualizing it? Are we seeing just in insisting something is humor? Do we find it funny even if we don't understand it? If I say it's kind of like that thing from this is the only reference I can think from Fairly Odd Parents, and one that tells Cosmo pudding and he laughs, and the word pudding is not necessarily in and of itself funny, but by putting humor onto it and with an inflection, we see it as a joke even if we don't get a setup or a punchline.
Right. Bill, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one other thing that makes it different is when Excel Saga was made, we lived in a monoculture where there wasn't as many rabbit holes as there are today with the internet, and so the references are much easier to understand because they're seen by everyone, like the Star Wars references in the space episode, or the the whole idea of the cosmos, and it's a kind of a what do we do with it? Whereas with Pop Team Ethic, even though I still haven't watched that, shame on me, you're gonna go down more rabbit holes because there's more. The culture is so spread out at this point with its own little niches and long tails.
And that kind of works in the other way too, because like a lot of things that would be easy to reference in like a worldwide culture like Star Wars, for example, it's just low-hanging fruit at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, the Star Wars joke is not even a joke anymore because it's
Exactly.
just, someone saying "May the Force be with you" is almost like saying "There's no place like home," or out of all the bars in all the world. Like it's just such a common phrase that it's not even a reference. It's just
Star Wars is
what we say.
definitely part of that. They're part of our monoculture. I feel like another way that it is different and differs from 2018 comedy is that Excel Saga relies more like physical gags.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we look at like Star Wars, you're right, like it's so prevalent in like worldwide pop culture. But another thing I think that works in Excel Saga is that a lot of the humor is just like physical gag humor. So even if you don't really understand the references, like if you don't really know who Reggie Matsumoto or his works like Galaxy Express or Captain Harlock, a lot of the visual gags still make sense and are still funny in their own right. So when you see this cute little yellow creature get popped in the face, and it's suddenly this really serious Go-Go 13-esque face, it still is hilarious on its own right. And
right.
I don't think I've ever actually sat down and played a visual novel, much less a date sim. But there's a lot of stuff that, like in the date sim episode, that it just works as anyone who's ever touched a video game, that really crude sexual humor as well. That's, like when you compare it to, again, like 2018 comedy that operates on this galaxy brain level of just weirdness, absurdity, it's definitely more accessible, I would say.
And physical comedy by its nature is more universal. There's no cultural barriers because physical humor came out of the school of pantomime.
Yeah.
I think some of the things that make me laugh the most in Excel Saga are just some of Excel's walk cycles that are just her loopy arms and wiggling like snaky body that she sometimes has. Is just so funny because you kind of get a real sense of who she is as a character. And when you animate a character, or when you as an actor put a lot of physicality in how a character moves and sort of interacts with their environment in subtle ways, I think a lot of great humor comes from that.
And it seems like a lot of the anime comedies that really click the hardest with the like the worldwide community, like stuff like Nichijou and to a degree like FLCL, like a lot of it is very, very physical. And like what you said, Bill, it's like that's something that seems to resonate with audiences no matter where you're from, no matter what cultural background you come from.
Or even relying less on maybe cultural references and more just critiquing the human condition. I mean, I think one of the reasons Osamatsu-san kind of hit in the US the way it is because it's about them being neats. They are, kids who live at home and have no jobs, and what is our generation kind of dealing with is that. And that sort of universal idea of failure or not living up to an expectation. The way the trio who lives next door to Excel and Hyatt are all kind of, they start off without jobs and they get menial, government jobs. It's something that happens across cultures and is very relatable, and making fun of that as opposed to it being necessarily a strictly Japanese commentary.
And on an even more primal level than that, it's like, oh, haha, I've felt pain before. That character just experienced pain. Ha ha ha.
I too have had a goggle face on when I got hit. Very relatable.
It happens to the best of us.
But enough about Welcome to the NHK.
Austin, since you often expressed pain while watching this show when you gave a few little live tweets here and there, is there anything about it that really was off-putting, or it didn't click with you, or you just disliked, or you thought could have been done better?
I guess what's that?
Sorry, I was just gonna say the art style.
Oh yeah, that probably most primarily. But not really, honestly. I think I was doing it mostly to just get on your nerves. So love you, Sully. Because honestly, I did find myself giggling a little bit at a lot of the jokes. Not everything clicked with me, but I guess my major complaints, and it seems like this is what a lot of people have an issue with, that apparently just gets better as the more you watch, is that I don't find Excel particularly interesting or that funny. None of the jokes that I laughed at in the show were directly related to her. It was always something else outside of it, and I think from what I've seen, the show kind of does. I like a lot of push and pull comedies, and stories in general that are funny. For them to have these manic, exciting for a little bit, and then bring another manic, exciting, sketch or scene out of nowhere, and then chill for a little bit. And this one is just very rapid pace all the time, and that's not really super my humor style. But I don't. I mind it a lot less this time around, and I think that is just me sort of conceding that no, I don't really like the art style, but that's okay. And then just having already, gotten through the initial hurdle of first impressions, just sort of being able to step back and reflect on it a little bit more and be like, I need to give this a second chance.
I'm not so mindful, I guess is not the best word, but what I'll use right now, of the art style. It doesn't bother me that much, maybe because, again, nostalgia, and two, I view it as a product of the time. For me, it's almost like saying, how dare a movie be in black and white before color? I mean, I know there is better looking anime from this time period, but I see it as, back then we wanted eyeballs that extended off the sides of the face, and we wanted hair that, was translucent and you could see through. That's just all we asked for in our character design.
I guess my issue with the art style is more to do with I'll give you $1 for every time I don't get a character name. Leader of a Cross.
Il Palazzo.
El Palazzo. Is just the outfit he wears is just, to me, is very jarring, and I'm not a fan of that. And I think one thing I would advise for someone who's new to Excel Saga is I would not go and binge this.
No, I definitely wouldn't binge this. I didn't binge it. I watched it 2 or 3 episodes at a time when I was able to get it.
Because it's so high energy and it's so manic, it wipes you out.
Yeah.
Just watching it, and that's not to say that that's bad, but I would just say, unless you have a very manic personality or very high energy, I would say just take this as a piecemeal. It's like candy. You don't want to eat all the candy in one sitting, or else you're just going to be hurting the next morning.
Let me add just a quick addendum to my criticism. I think I don't think it's necessarily the art style, but just the way the show was made. Like that very early 2000s, and really does not age like everything from that early 2000s, late 90s digital era.
Let's actually touch upon that here, cut in. We talked about, the contextualizing everything in that time period. So what other stuff was coming out in the end of 1999?
I am glad you asked, but I just closed that tab, so let me open it back up again.
Austin.
You're fine. Okay, I got it. All right, so in fall of 1999, we had the premiere of this little show that we've never talked about called One Piece. And that first came out in the same season as Excel Saga. It came out just a couple weeks after Excel Saga first premiered. We also had the original Hunter x Hunter coming out at that time. We had the second season of Initial D.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Initial D is one of those things that I don't want to say it hasn't aged well, but it is aged in a very interesting manner.
Yeah. And
not like a fine wine.
It's got a style.
And something that sort of was, carrying over that that cell animation aesthetic and hadn't moved to digital yet. The Big O came out then. So it still holds up pretty well visually. The great classic Zoids that some people will mention every now and again.
Woo! Love Zoids.
Blue Gender. We've got
Steel Angel Kurumi. Wow, that's so big. That's like one of the first few things I watched Anime Club back in the day.
And
Gigi Shirat. Wow.
Card Captor Sakura was still airing at that time. Detective Conan obviously has never stopped.
Pet Shop of Horrors OVAs came out in 99.
What was that?
The Pet Shop of Horrors OVAs.
Oh, gotcha.
Huh.
A prequel OVA to Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Bill.
Oh,
Turn A Gundam.
Oh, Jinro.
Ooh.
So it has some rarefied company in its premiere. I've also seen there's apparently the Gregory Horror Show anime that came out in 99, and I'm wondering if it's like a very bland Rocky Horror ripoff.
I want to see the anime version of
Dr. Frankengreg.
Gregenfurter, exactly. We don't talk about him much. And like you said, the Excel is very much of its time. The manga came out in 96, and then the anime came out in 99. So we're in that weird like transitory period between when anime was like leaving cells and going to digital, and when the art styles were changing. I mean, it's kind of funny to hear people talk about like, oh, all anime looks the same, and now at this point in my life, I'm like, no, you can tell the eras, and this is very much of the time where I said, eyeballs go off the face, the hair is over the eyes, but the eyes are still there, you can still see them. Every girl, without exception, has had the one little fang in the corner of her mouth. It's very much that was just how character designs were, and now 10 years from now we're gonna be complaining about everything looking the way it does now.
Everybody's eyes looking like way too good.
Everyone being very
soft.
Soft, and they all have the same body. It's like every anime character in the last like 4 or 5 years has been made in the same character creator.
But it's funny because like Excel Saga exists like halfway between like Slayers and like Clanad, so it's like a prime midpoint of like big ol' eyes, stupid hair,
I love Clanad. Me and Bill were talking about, since he's watching it, that I should rewatch it. We should talk about it. And as much as I love that series for it being the first slice of life I watched, the first anime that made me cry, that animation, I will admit, I don't hold much nostalgia for because it did age terribly.
Yeah, Moe art.
I always hated the cockroach girl.
Anyway,
who was it that got mad that I called Nagisa the cockroach girl?
Any number of people.
I've just alienated half of our fan base.
We're gonna get a lot of hate mail.
I hope so. Send it.
I'll be excited.
ThirdImpactAnime@gmail.com.
Prove me wrong or change my mind.
All right, do we have anything else you guys want to jump into before we wrap this up?
Austin, would you recommend Excel Saga, being that you're the new one?
I don't know. I guess it depends on the person. I'd have to finish it before I can answer that question, so I'm gonna pass.
Are you going to finish it?
I don't know. If I finish it, it'll take me a while. I'll take the Bill method and be like, I will eat the show like candy. Since it's not October, it won't be all at once.
Bill and
Nice.
Tobias, since you guys have already seen it, what are your kind of like thoughts revisiting it?
Revisiting it, I still love the humor. It still makes me laugh, just the kind of the manic absurdness of it and the references. I would say that when it comes to the humor, that's more it's depends on your tastes. But for me personally, I really liked it. I think the only barrier to entry for newer fans would maybe be that Digipaint art style, which Austin has referred to. But overall, I thoroughly enjoy the series. If you have a Crunchyroll account or a Funimation account, it's on those services. Check them out.
Yep. I mean, I would say for myself, I can't really in good conscience give a blanket recommendation for Excel Saga in the year of our Lord 2018. Like Austin said, it's going to depend a lot on the person who I'm trying to recommend this to. I feel like I would enjoy it differently now, having a more robust knowledge of anime and the anime references. Much in the same way my experience with Furikuri initially was, I didn't really enjoy it as much, just not quite getting a lot of that. Much in the same way Excel Saga, there would probably be a different appreciation now. But like Bill and Austin said, like the early 2000s Digipaint stuff does not look good. It does not hold up, unfortunately. But if you can sort of make it through that, and if the humor works for you, I would say it's still worth at least watching some of. The first few episodes are still legitimately worth it, I would say. The Date Sim episode is hilarious. I will hold that opinion to the end of my days. If you want a little more crazy, I would say watch the last episode. It kind of takes that dial, turns it up to 11.
They literally made it to the point that they knew it could not be broadcast.
Yes, it is ridiculous, and a lot of the humor in that episode I've kind of grown out of. But when I first found this and wanted a little more edgy stuff, I really thought it was hilarious. If you like that, I would say try to track down and watch Puni Puni Poeme. This 2-episode AVA that's based on an anime that's like a joke in the series itself. Like the whole shtick there is they took the singer for Excel and the opening song, Love, Loyalty, and they put her in anime. And the main character, Poemi, refers to herself as her voice actress, Kobayashi. Nabishin shows up. There's a lot of like meta humor there with the real life actors and their characters. It definitely goes more in the deep end. It goes even crazier than episode 26 of Excel Saga, to the point where it either has been or still is banned in New Zealand. I can't find confirmation if it still is banned. Everything refers to it in the past tense. But yeah, it definitely tries to be a little too edgy, so it may not work for everyone. Some of the sexual humor, but it definitely, if you want a more distilled version of Excel Saga without watching like 26 episodes of this stuff, Puni Puni is the way to go. And likewise, like with that, I said that my own experience to Excel Saga was watching it. Like the very first thing I did at my very first anime convention, Friday morning. So the very next day, Saturday night, I'm trolling the convention halls trying to find something to watch, something to enjoy before I eventually make my trek back to the hotel. When I would jump into a screener room and they're showing Puni Puni Poeme, and having no idea that this was, an Excel Saga ripoff or anything like that, I was sitting watching it. Like I'm standing in the doorway, just kind of like, 1 foot in, just not sure if I want to, step in and actually subject myself to this. And one of the hotel staff shows up, and he's like, taking the trash out. So he stops by the door and peeks his head in. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but he gave me one of those looks that was just like, "You fucking kids." it was pure. It was one of those like convention moments where you have the normies. They kind of get a glimpse into what you guys are doing, and they aren't really sure what to make of it all. And it's another experience that will probably stick with me. Just that guy taking the trash out, watching this little weird little OVA.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Sully.
Oh yeah,
but
I was kind of done with sentence.
I just want to add this one quick point as an addendum to what you're saying, Tobias. If you're at a bigger convention like Animazement or Otakon, or if you're out on the West Coast and you're going to Anime Expo, or maybe you live up in Canada and go to Anime North, go check out those screener rooms, because you'll find something that you've never watched before. And the screener rooms that I've watched at Animazement, that's where I discovered my favorite animes that I still love today. Like, that's where I discovered my fandom for Lupin the Third. That's where I discovered Grave of the Fireflies. And it's a weird juxtaposition, but you can find really interesting things in the screener rooms. So if there's something that you haven't seen before, I highly recommend it. I know we live in the world where you can find everything online, but I think with a screener room at a convention, can be just a fun experience of just watching some random show with a random group of people. It becomes a fun group experience.
For sure.
I highly recommend it.
And there's definitely this inertia, like when I'm at home on my computer and I've got the whole season in front of me for Crunchyroll, there's just that level of like inertia in just starting something. Even hearing about something on like Twitter and hearing how good it is, there's just some sort of inertia with me specifically, like to try to start something. So even though like I've at least fairly familiar with a lot of stuff that are in screener rooms now, just taking the time to sit down and actually watch it really kind of like makes the difference there.
Yeah, and because of stuff like that, like people thinking, "Oh, I don't." Well, it's sort of the counterpoint thought process on that. It's like a lot of people will not go to the screener rooms because they know that they can just watch it at home. But I think that's kind of what you were saying, Bill, is kind of like the idea of just going there to watch it with a random group of people and just have fun in that community public space is what makes these screener rooms like a lot of fun. So don't think that you shouldn't go see something just because you can watch it at home. Like, it's going to be more fun to watch it like at a con with people, and you're probably going to have a much more enjoyable experience than just sitting watching it at home.
That's one of the reasons I refuse to go to the movies by myself, is I want to share a first time, especially viewing experience with others. And I think that's one of the few ways we in the community can still kind of reach out to each other in 2018 without it being like through social media or through like this sort of weird networking we were doing, is actually like, physically going into a theater space and watching something together. Even if we're not necessarily talking or interacting, there's something very special and communal about that.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of cap this episode off, I want to end on this note. That opening theme is one of the best opening themes of all time for me. I love that song.
It is quite good.
It's really good. It's one of my favorites, and I found myself singing it today while doing some errands, thinking about doing this podcast. I was just sort of singing it to myself like a mad person crossing the street.
And
really
people listening to this episode will either have already heard a bit of that opening or are about to hear it very soon.
Yeah, and I don't think we can not talk about the ending song as well. I think that's another thing that will stick with me no matter what, is poor little Minchi and Bolero of Loneliness.
All right, guys. Well, I guess that wraps it up. If you guys are cool to cut.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Glad you guys stuck around to listen to us ramble on about Excel Saga and comedy and anime, and seems to always come back around to convention culture, and that's kind of how we like it here. So, yeah, fun stuff. So, Tobias, where can people talk to you about anime?
You can talk to me nowhere because I don't want to talk to you about no animes. But if you really insist, you can find me on Twitter at Reverend_Tobias or on Facebook at just Reverend Tobias.
What about you, Sully?
If you want to, bust down my door and yell at me for insulting the cockroach girl, you can reach me on Twitter at Calvakun, that's CALVA_KUN, and nowhere else because I have a private life.
And you, Mr. Foreman?
If you want to talk to me about One Piece or just where comedy and anime is going, you can find me on Twitter at WBForeman999. And
just like the train.
just like the train.
Or the numbers.
just pretend that that instead of it being Twitter, it's an AOL chat room. because that is my Twitter handle, an AOL chat room handle. But you can also find our wonderful postings on our Facebook page. I highly recommend going to thirdimpactanime.wordpress.com, where we occasionally write some good articles, I think. So check out all our stuff, and hope everyone has a great day or night whenever you're listening to it.
And as for me, you can find me at Bebop Shock. That's Bebop is in Cowboy Bebop, and Shock is in Bioshock, and you can talk to me about whatever. And this has been another episode of Third Impact Anime. Thanks for tuning in. Let's have a great night.